Welcome to my video blog series, Moving Out of the Problem into the Solution. I'm Dr. Stephen Grinstead. Today it's going to be all about differentiating between pain and suffering. And the tagline from my book, Freedom from Suffering, A Journey of Hope, that my wife Ellen came up with is, freedom from suffering is both a right and it's also a responsibility. So just a little bit of background information about me is I've been living with chronic pain since 1982. I've been handling it in a recovery-friendly way ever since then. And from 1996 through present, I've been developing and streamlining and evidence-based monitoring my addiction-free pain management manualized treatment system. I've written several books over the years and many different peer-reviewed articles. And if you want any of my books, you can get them at relapse.org under the Pain Management tab. You know, one of the confusing things is people often can't differentiate. They often struggle with differentiating between pain and suffering. So when I talk about freedom from suffering, I like to start with the story of the poisoned arrow. This story is attributed to the Buddha because one of his followers kept questioning everything and kept wanting to know all the why. And so he told him the story of this person who got shot with a poisoned arrow. And everyone, his family and friends, were very concerned. They wanted to take him to someone who could take the arrow out and save his life. But he says, no, wait, I need to understand. Who shot the arrow? What kind of bow was used? What was the arrow made of? What feathers off of what bird was used? I need to know all this. And he kept fighting. He kept wanting to know why? What were the motives of the person that shot me? And while he was speculating about all this, he died. You know, and the moral here is the poison arrow is suffering. Instead of complaining about it and wallowing in it and delving in it and letting us kill us, let's step away from the poison arrow. Let's remove it. Life is so short. It must not be spent in endless speculation that does not bring us any closer to the truth. That was the final line of this story the Buddha told his follower. And it's a very wise story. So one of the first things to help differentiate and find freedom from suffering is understand the components of pain. Pain is part of our survival. It tells us when something's going wrong. It has different components. It has an ascending signal that comes from the point of the pain receptors throughout the body. Like right now, I'm having a mild flare-up in my knee. And that signal gets transmitted that something's going on here, something's wrong. And then it gets sent to the thalamus, the part of the brain that interprets the pain signal. And this leads to a descending cascade of symptoms. In other words, it's a meaning that gets assigned to that pain signal. A signal gets to the frontal lobes and we have a thought about it. It gets sent to the limbic system. We have an emotion or feeling about it. Then how it impacts our friends, family, and community is another part of the descending modulation system. It's the role that gets assigned to the person in pain, and usually self-assigned. You know, I'm a loser. And there's a lot of family and cultural beliefs about pain. And the other piece is the spiritual component. When people live with chronic pain, sometimes it can separate them from their spiritual values, practices, and principles. So we need to understand all the components of pain, and we need to work with all four areas to achieve the freedom from suffering. I see the spiritual as the glue that holds it all together. Also, learning as much about pain as possible. Knowledge is power, but that's not enough. It's moving knowledge into action. that is crucial. So it's really important when I work with my patients to help them understand the difference between acute and chronic pain. The recurrent acute pain or pain flare-ups, this is the one that leads a lot of people into trouble with over-medicating or really suffering. Then there's the anticipatory pain reaction, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And a lot of times people get locked up and immobilized because they're afraid to do anything that might cause their pain to get worse. There's the nerve pain or neuropathic pain symptoms. These are also very misunderstood by many people. And then finally, patients, I believe, need to be educated about the importance of making peace with their pain. Stop the war. So when we explore pain versus suffering, we need to remember again that pain is that ascending signal that says something's wrong, whereas suffering is how that signal might get distorted, amplified, or corrupted. And instead of ouch, this hurts, it becomes horrible, awful, terrible, agonizing, unbearable. And there's an old saying, a Zen saying that goes back a long time: pain's inevitable, suffering's optional. Now remember, it doesn't matter if the pain is physiological or psychological, suffering is suffering. And the tagline again, freedom from suffering, is both your right and your responsibility. Well, which one is it? The good news is you get to decide. And that's one of the tools I have that I work with. I do an immediate assessment when I first start working with someone to help them see how many of their symptoms are physiological or ascending and how much of the symptoms are psychological or descending. And that is very important into developing the treatment goals and objectives and the treatment plan. So when we talk about the ascending signals, the physical pain symptoms, this is a list of some of the typical ones that are the ascending signals, the physiological: aching, throbbing, slitting, piercing, irritated, sore, burning, stinging, inflamed, sharp, hot, radiating, tender, painful, numbing, and tingling. Now some of these are neuropathic. For example, the burning and stinging, the hot, radiating, and the numbing and tingling. Now the descending signals are the suffering. Words like it's dreadful, it's severe, it's irritating, it's nagging, it's saddening, it's depressing, distressing, excruciating, grueling and punishing, upsetting and aggravating, terrifying, dreadful, and fatiguing and debilitating. And I hope when you see these side by side that you can see that really it's important to help yourself know which ones you're dealing with. Unfortunately, people have a problem of using medication when they're having a high level of psychological suffering. And this is not a good idea. It's like having an infected cut and you just slap a Band-Aid on it. You don't clean it out, you don't medicate it, you just Band-Aid it. Symptom management. That doesn't work. That's only going to make it worse. It's going to fester and it's going to continue to deteriorate. And that's what happens with these psychological emotional symptoms. So when I work with people, I like to have them engaged with their right brain, and sometimes I'll give them an assignment. The picture I'm going to show you in a minute, I challenged a patient of mine who, when she first started with me, she was really suffering with pain. So I asked her to bring in at our next session an artistic interpretation of her relationship with her pain, or what her pain looks like to her. And she labeled it, "My pain, the monster from within." And it looked like a very scary thing. If my pain looked and acted like that, I'd probably be a little concerned too. The good news is that making peace with pain can look like this. The same woman, after we worked together for a while, and I noticed the healing process, I says, what is your relationship with like your pain today? Why don't you bring me in an artistic interpretation of that, of where you were to where you are? And this is what she came up with, a whole different one. And she actually labeled it Making Peace with My Pain. And I asked her, is that something that I can use? Do I have your permission? She says, absolutely, if it helps somebody else. So Making Peace with Pain started years ago with this patient who brought in this photo and tagged it Making Peace with My Pain. So what do we need? Making peace with pain. Well, the first step is to stop the fights. Call a ceasefire. Stop the suffering. It's important that for me, I need to see my pain as an ally, not an adversary. And I have over the years been able to honestly say my pain's my best friend. Now, there's times when I want to slap my best friend upside the head if it had one, but and it doesn't mean you're not going to get irritated, but it needs to be your friend because it's really trying to tell us something needs attention. And you know, the bottom line is we can't always get rid of our pain completely, but the good news is we can always stop suffering with it. That is a choice. And again, making peace with my pain was a vital and crucial element in order for me to achieve my freedom from suffering. Like I say, I haven't had pain-free existence since 1982, but I haven't suffered with my pain since about 1984. I learned how not to do that, and I want to thank you again for joining me on my video blog series of moving out of the problem into the solution. And this one's been all about how to find your own freedom from suffering. I want to thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate your attention, and if you have any thoughts on topics you'd like me to present on, please let me know.